Grace and peace to everyone, and welcome to our Bible study here tonight, the 22nd of October, Wednesday, midweek Bible study, Wednesday the 22nd of October, 2025. You're watching the Thusia Seventh-day Adventist Church program brought to you. It's live on Thusia Seventh-day Adventist Church page on Facebook, Thusian Institute for Religious Liberty Incorporated page on Facebook as well. We're also live on YouTube channels, Outreach Through Zion on YouTube, as well as on Survival 960 on YouTube. We're also live on X. Anissa Batiste is the name on X. And we are live on Rumble. Rumble channel name is Thusia SDA Church. Thusia SDA Church. I'm Sister Anissa Batiste, and with me are brethren of Thusia SDA Church, Brother Calvert Batiste, Sister Karima, and Brother Midon Paris. Brother Beach may be joining us with his video soon. So we thank you for being here. We see you coming in, and as usual, we ask you as you come in to help us to share, tag persons, share the live, let them know that we are on. And without saying anything further, let me begin with a word of prayer. Let us pray, please. Gracious Father in heaven, Yahweh, who art the one true God, whom we know through Yeshua, your Son, who is verily one with you in nature, as he is Yahweh, Savior, in a temple of flesh. We bow before you, thanking you for your love toward us in the truths of the plan of salvation, even to warn us about the signs of the end, that we may prepare in all time sin-freeness to face our life record in the investigative judgment, and as we face the perilous times around us, even of the alarms of war. Please forgive us of our sins. Please give us your indwelling through the Spirit of truth, and help us that we may speak the truth in warning, in appeals, in instruction, in the doctrines of Christ, to those who watch and listen to this program, that they may receive the aid, the help that they need. Please be with us and give us success for your name's sake. And we thank you in Jesus' name for helping us. Amen. Amen. Okay. So grace and peace to you all. And I see you coming in on the live, all our brethren in different parts of the world, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, America, different states in America. Thank you for letting us know, Sister Stephanie, that she's watching on YouTube. Okay, and and everywhere where you are joining us from, we greet you with grace and peace. And we're also greeting our viewers on YouTube. Thank you for being with us by God's grace. And help us to share the live, tag persons, and share. Tonight is an important video study. I would like to update us on what is happening right around us, right here in our region, here in the Caribbean, where the alarms of war is concerned. And that is what I have decided to call the study, based on a statement from Sister White. So here's our flyer, the alarms of war. And we're looking at, yes, you guessed it, the recent happenings where America is threatening war against Venezuela, real threat of war against the nation of Venezuela. But in this threat, the entire region of the Caribbean, not only the Southern Caribbean, but the entire area is at risk. And we see this by the recent developments where different countries such as Grenada, Antigua, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and indeed the CARICOM, or the Caribbean community, the countries that make up the Caribbean community on a whole, have made statements. And in the case of Grenada, we see that, and Antigua, we see that they have been approached by the United States of America for cooperation to cooperate in any way of making their countries bases, as it were, for military assets of the US, because clearly the US has its intention where war or fighting, intervening in Venezuela is concerned. But there are some things that, when you have the spirit of truth and the things that we have been studying lately in terms of really understanding continually who is behind all evils in the world, you almost automatically ask yourself, where is that contra-human hand in it all? And we will say something from scripture about that. And so I went digging, and I remember asking one of our brethren, because I was determined to pursue that angle. And we can find it. We can see the contra-human hand behind it all. And we will look at some of that tonight. What I will show is not exhaustive in any way. I look forward to Brother Medina's Friday night coming, because I recognize that with the day, more and more is being unfolded. And I am sure that by Friday night, God willing, Brother Medina would have things to show us and say to us on this matter that are very important. Okay? So share, tag. The pictures on my screen are self-explanatory. And it will bring us up to date as much as is possible as to even how we are to take this news of what is happening right around us in our Caribbean region. Yes, I see Sister Carlu in Sweden. Right, so lovely to have you there, sis, and all our brethren from all over the world and visiting persons, friends, viewers. So I will begin with one or two scriptures concerning the signs of the end and a statement or two from Ellen G. White. If we turn in our Bibles to the book of Matthew chapter 24, Jesus warned us that among the signs of the end would be wars and rumors of war, or wars and rumors of wars. So Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 to 8. But we are reminded, while we are warned that these would be among the signs of the end, we are reminded that it is not yet the end. Okay? It is not yet the end, because the final end will come about through the global Sunday law crisis. But before that, there will be trouble. There will be stirrings. And this is why you can't really pray per se to stop it, because it is inevitable. Even if God in his mercy determines, as he in his infinite wisdom determines not yet, this is inevitable. These things are bound to happen, because it is a part of the events that will take us to the end. And this is something that you must be sober about. We will not always have ease and comfort. We will not, because the end is coming, and it is what we have said we want, and it is what we have said we pray for, and we are working towards. Well, it is coming. He is coming. Matthew 24, 6 to 8. I see Sister Joanna and her family are on. Praise God for that. Amen. It says, Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 to 8, quote, these are the words of Christ. He said, and by the way, if I were to back up in verse 3, you would see that what he is saying in verses 6 to 8 is a part of answering the question about the sign of his coming. So let me read verse 4. It says, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So the disciples asked Christ about the end of the world and the sign of his coming. And he began to give them answers. Now we're not dealing with the first thing he tells them, which really is what will point us to what will cause the very end, the false prophet movement that will bring about the image of the beast in America and the mark of the beast. That is what will bring the final end. That's the final crisis. But we're not touching that now. But the other things he said after that do constitute also signs of the end and of his coming. So let's read about those, some of it, verses 6 to 8. Quote, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars." These are the words of Christ. He says, what shall be the sign of my coming and the end of the world? You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So before the final end, you could expect to hear about wars and rumors of wars. Yes, verse 7 says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse or different places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." So you see, my dear friends, my dear people, this is coming. It is inevitable. Before the final end, we will hear wars of wars, rumors of wars. There will actually be stirrings and agitations among nations, nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom, resulting in things like famines. There'll be pestilences, so look out for more health tests. There'll be pestilences. There'll be earthquakes and other disasters in different places. This is what our Bibles tell us. Clearly, we see in Holy Scripture that this is the signs of the end. And so it tells us that we are really in the end when we see these things. Now let's look again. Let's look at Luke. Let's look at the account in Luke chapter 21. And I'm reading verses 9 and 10. Luke chapter 21, verses 9 and 10. Okay? I'm just zooming in on this one in particular. Luke chapter 21, verses 9 and 10. It says, But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by." So you see again, Christ tells us, and again he was answering the question that where they asked him, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign? What sign, will there be when these things shall come to pass? And Christ begins to give them the signs. And one of the things he says again is, you shall hear of wars and commotions. But he says, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Even in that, Christ has helped us, for he has not left us ignorant about what is to come. And in being aware, or in not being ignorant, we have an opportunity to prepare. We have an opportunity to put our houses in order, as it were, and to not only do that, but to warn the world and help them to prepare. Amen? So Christ tells us there'll be wars and commotions. And then in verse 10, he says again, "Then said he unto them, nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." And we could stay there. So when you hear of wars in the Caribbean today, wars in this America's region, America South, and in the Eastern Caribbean, even further north, islands involved, you must understand these are some of the things that Christ told us would happen. We've been hearing of wars all the time. Well, we couldn't even call it a war when you consider the situation in Gaza, in Palestine. We understand that Israel was committing a genocide and is committing genocide against the Palestinians. Really, that is what it is. It's not even a war. And we saw the provocation recently of war with Iran. America following Israel, and Israel itself provoking war with Iran. We've been hearing of wars and rumors of wars, and we've been seeing warlike activity in different regions. I think it is coming home to us now in the Caribbean, and it is for a wake-up call to us. And even in that, God is helping us. Even in that, my dear people, God is helping us. The present is a time of overwhelming interest to all living. Rulers and statesmen, men who occupy positions of trust and authority, thinking men and women of all classes have their attention fixed upon the events taking place about us. They are watching the relations that exist among the nations. They observe the intensity that is taking possession of every earthly element, and they recognize that something great and decisive is about to take place. And this is true. When you consider what different commentators are saying, when you look at different things that people are saying, they recognize that something terrible is coming and that terrible events are afoot, as we will see in the particular situation we're looking at here tonight. So there's an intensity that is being observed, that is taking possession of every earthly element, and all are involved, you know, rulers, people of all classes, men and women, everybody is watching what is happening. We're also told in the second quote on your screen, the calamities by land and sea, the unsettled state of society, the alarms of war. That's where we got our topic. The alarms of war are portentous. They forecast approaching events of the greatest magnitude. Always remember that the current events are shadows of what is to come. Much greater and far worse is to come, even beyond our imagination. They forecast approaching events of the greatest magnitude. The agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They are strengthening for the last great crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. Did you hear that, my dear people? These are the things that we ought to consider, because these are what is coming. It is inevitable. You cannot avoid it. The important thing is to know about it and to prepare to face it. So war is brewing. We are hearing the alarms of war. Venezuela is targeted by America right now. America has been claiming that there are narcotics terrorists in the waters, that it is a part of Venezuela somehow pushing certain drugs, and that they have some sort of duty to stop them. And what have they done? Instead of arresting the boats, the people on the boats, and showing the world the drug bust that they made, they are just killing them. They're just bombing them up. I think they say to date, 32 persons have been killed, 32 thereabout. And there were 2 who were alive, 2 hostages that they held. And I think they've sent them to their respective countries. I think Colombia was one and another one. But what I want to show you, right? The scope of what I want to share with you is, one, the facts we have about the real reason for what America is doing. Of course, the whole point about it is that Trinidad and Tobago is in the middle of it all. And sadly, the governing body, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, so far is in support of what America is doing. People are crying shame on the Prime Minister. Understand context. This is not about stopping drug traffickers. There are enough commentaries online to show that Venezuela isn't even a main source of drugs coming into America. Not Venezuela. So why are you harassing them? There are other reasons. One of the major reasons has to do with economics, has to do with robbery. I know you may not have seen it, so let me just go back and tell you who is speaking. John Perkins, former chief economist for Chastity Main Inc., author of the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So here are his confessions. Hear what they have been doing.
We economic hitmen really have been the ones responsible for creating this first truly global empire. And we work many different ways. But perhaps the most common is that we will identify a country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sister organizations. But the money never actually goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our big corporations to build infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, industrial parks, ports, things that benefit a few rich people in that country, in addition to our corporations, but really don't help the majority of the people at all. However, those people, the whole country is left holding a huge debt, and such a big debt they can't repay it, and that's part of the plan, that they can't repay it. And so at some point, we economic hitmen go back to them and say, listen, you owe us a lot of money, can't pay your debt, so sell your oil real cheap to our oil companies. Allow us to build a military base in your country, or send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world like Iraq, or vote with us on the next UN vote. To have their electric utility company privatized and their water and sewage system privatized and sold to U.S. corporations or other multinational corporations. So there was a whole mushrooming thing, and it's so typical of the way the IMF and the World Bank work. That you put a country in debt, and it's such a big debt it can't pay it, and then you offer to refinance that debt and pay even more interest. And you demand this quid pro quo, which you call a conditionality or good governance, which means basically that they've got to sell off their resources, including many of their social services, their utility companies, their school systems sometimes, their penal systems, their insurance systems, to foreign corporations. So it's a double, triple, quadruple whammy.
Then you offer to refinance their debt.
The precedent for economic hitmen really began back in the early 50s when democratically elected Mossadegh, who was elected in Iran, he was considered to be the hope for democracy in the Middle East and around the world. He was a Time magazine.
So now he's proceeding to give you examples of how they did what he just explained there. They start with Iran. Now these are agents in America, right? Of course, you know the secret agents and agencies, the corrupt criminal agencies, right? But they start here with Iran, and then they will go from country to country and show you what they did. So you see on the screen, Iran, 1953, okay?
It began back in the early 50s when democratically elected Mossadegh, who was elected in Iran, he was considered to be the hope for democracy in the Middle East and around the world. He was Time magazine's Man of the Year. But one of the things that he'd run on and began to implement was the idea that foreign oil companies needed to pay the Iranian people a lot more for the oil that they were taking out of Iran. The Iranian people should benefit from their own oil. Strange policy. We didn't like that, of course. But we were afraid to do what we normally were doing, which was to send in the military. Instead, we sent in one CIA agent, Kermit Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt's relative. And Kermit went in with a few $1 million and was very, very effective and efficient. And in a short amount of time, he managed to get Mossadegh overthrown and brought in the Shah of Iran to replace him, who always was favorable to oil. And it was extremely effective.
Mobs overflow Tehran. Army officers shout that Mossadegh has surrendered and his regime as virtual dictator of Iran is ended. Pictures of the Shah paraded through the streets as sentiment reverses. The Shah is welcomed home.
So back here in the United States, in Washington, people looked around and said, wow, that was easy and cheap. So this established a whole new way of manipulating countries, of creating empire. The only problem with Roosevelt was that he was a card-carrying CIA agent, and had he been caught, the ramifications could have been pretty serious. So very quickly at that point, the decision was made to use private consultants to channel the money through the World Bank or the IMF or one of the other such agencies, to bring in people like me who worked for private companies. So that if we got caught, there would be no governmental ramifications. When Arbenz became president of Guatemala, the country was very much under the thumbs of United Fruit Company, the big international corporations. And Arbenz ran on the ticket that says, we want to get the land back to the people. And once he took power, he was implementing policies that would do exactly that, give the land rights back to the people. United Fruit didn't like that very much. And so they hired a public relations firm, launched a huge campaign in the United States to convince the United States people, the citizens of the United States, and the press of the United States, and the Congress of the United States, that Arbenz was a Soviet puppet. And if we allowed him to stay in power, the Soviets would have a foothold in this hemisphere. And that, at that point in time, was a huge fear on everybody's mind, the Red Terror, the Communist Terror. And so, to make a long story short, out of this public relations campaign came a commitment on the part of the CIA and the military to take this man out. And in fact, we did. We sent in planes, we sent in soldiers, we sent in jackals, we sent everything in to take him out, and did take him out. And as soon as he was removed from office, the new guy that took over after him basically reinstated everything to the big international corporations, including United Fruit.
So they will take you out if you're not supporting their wishes, if you don't want to give them what they want. They will push propaganda against you, lies, get the media against you, even create unrest within your country, even create, tension and wars inside your country, civil unrest and so on, and then take you out if you're not cooperating and put somebody else or facilitate somebody else going into office who they could control. They can't control Maduro, apparently.
Ecuador, for many years, has been ruled by pro-U.S. dictators, often relatively brutal. Then it was decided that they were going to have a truly democratic election. Jaime Roldos ran for office. And his main goal, he said, as president, would be to make sure that Ecuador's resources were used to help the people. And he won, overwhelming, by more votes than anybody had ever won anything in Ecuador. And he began to implement these policies to make sure that the profits from oil went to help the people. Well, we didn't like that in the United States. I was sent down as one of several economic hitmen to change Roldos, to corrupt him, to bring him around, to let him know, okay, you can get very rich, you and your family, if you play our game, but if you continue to try to keep these policies you've promised, you're going to go. He wouldn't listen. He was assassinated.
He was assassinated.
As soon as the plane crashed, the whole area was cordoned off. The only people that allowed him were the U.S. military from a nearby base and some of the Ecuadorian military. When an investigation was launched, two of the key witnesses died in car accidents before they had a chance to testify. A lot of very, very strange things that went on around.
You had that? Kill the witnesses?
I, like most people who've really looked at this case, have absolutely no doubt that it was assassination. And of course, in my position as an economic hitman, I was always expecting something to happen to Jaime, whether it be a coup or assassination. I wasn't sure, but that he would be taken down because he was not being corrupted. He would not allow himself to be corrupted the way we wanted to corrupt him.
Did you hear those confessions? Take out the leader when they will not allow you to corrupt them. And anybody who wants to testify, get rid of them too. What's going on now with Charlie Kirk issue? They want to talk about gag order. Huh? You see what is happening? You see what's been going on since he started from 1950s, Iran, Guatemala, now he's Ecuador. Now he's going to, the next country is Panama, 1981. Watch. See it on the screen.
Omar Torrijos, president of Panama, was, one of my favorite people. I really, really liked him. He was very charismatic. He was a guy who really wanted to help his country. And when I tried to bribe him or corrupt him, he said, look, John, he called me Juanito. He said, look, Juanito, I don't need the money. What I really need is for my country to be treated fairly. I need for the United States to repay the debts that you owe my people for all the destruction you've done here. I need to be in a position where I can help other Latin American countries win their independence and be free of this terrible presence from the north that you people are exploiting us so badly. I need to have the Panama Canal back in the hands of the Panamanian people. That's what I want. And so, leave me alone. Don't try to bribe me. It was 1981, and in May, Jaime Roldos was assassinated. And Omar was very aware of this. Torrijos got his family together and he said, I'm probably next. But it's okay, because I have done what I came here to do. I've renegotiated the canal. The canal will now be in our hands. He just finished negotiating the treaty with Jimmy Carter. In June of that same year, just a couple of months later, he also went down in an airplane crash, which there's no question was executed by CIA-sponsored jackals. Tremendous amount of evidence that one of Torrijos' security guards handed him at the last moment as he was getting on the plane a tape recorder, a small tape recorder that contained a bomb. It is interesting to me how this...
See what they did using a small tape recorder containing a bomb? It just reminds me of the lapel mic, huh? Nothing new under the sun. The murderers and liars have been at work with propaganda and actual conspiracy to murder and murdering. They have been at work for years and years. Next country coming up.
Evidence that one of Torrijos' security guards handed him at the last moment as he was getting on the plane a tape recorder, a small tape recorder that contained a bomb.
My God. Venezuela.
It is interesting to me
2002.
how this system has continued pretty much the same way for years and years and years, except the economic hitmen have got better and better and better. Then we come up with, very recently, what happened in Venezuela. In 1998, Hugo Chavez gets elected president, following a long line of presidents who had been very corrupt and basically destroyed the economy of the country. And Chavez was elected amidst all that. Chavez stood up to the United States, and he's done it primarily demanding that Venezuelan oil be used to help the Venezuelan people. Well, we didn't like that in the United States. So in 2002, a coup was staged, which there's no question in my mind, and most other people's minds, that the CIA was behind that coup. The way that that coup was fomented was very reflective of what Kermit Roosevelt had done in Iran, of paying people to go out into the streets, to riot, to protest, to say this Chavez is very unpopular. You know, if you can get a few thousand people to do that in television, you can make it look like it's the whole country, and things start to mushroom. Except in the case of Chavez, he was smart enough, and the people were so strongly behind him that they overcame it, which was a phenomenal moment in the history of Latin America.
What he doesn't say before he goes on to Iraq, and I'm sorry about the stream being interrupted, they say copyright, they say it will come back when the copyrighted material is finished playing, right? So if you, well, I don't know if you'll be hearing me, but those of you who are watching on YouTube, just stick around. We have 2 more minutes on this clip. It will be back up, okay? What they didn't say, but I know I learned this before. He said they overcame it, but Chavez died. Chavez actually died. And what we learned is that Cuba's Castro had warned Chavez that they would give him cancer. And Chavez died, and they said he died from a heart attack due to his cancer. But even his own people did not accept that, and they wanted to pursue investigating it because they believed that he was killed, he was poisoned. Okay? Iraq, and then we'll be back after the material is finished. Yes, again, I repeat for those who didn't hear me before, just stick around a minute or two. The YouTube stream should be back up shortly, right?
Iraq actually is a perfect example of the way the whole system works. So we economic hitmen are the first line of defense. We go in and we try to corrupt governments and get them to accept these huge loans, which we then use as leverage to basically own them. If we fail, as I failed in Panama with Omar Torrijos and in Ecuador with Jaime Roldos, men who refuse to be corrupted, then the second line of defense is we send in the jackals. And the jackals either overthrow governments or they assassinate. And once that happens and a new government comes in, boy, it's going to toe the line because the new president knows what will happen if he doesn't. In the case of Iraq, both of those things failed. Economic hitmen were not able to get through to Saddam Hussein. We tried very hard. We tried to get him to accept a deal very similar to what the House of Saud had accepted in Saudi Arabia, but he wouldn't accept it. And so the jackals went in to take him out. They couldn't do it. His security was very good. After all, he had one time worked for the CIA. He'd been hired to assassinate a former president of Iraq and failed, but he knew the system. So in 91, we send in the troops and we take out the Iraqi military. So we assume at that point that Saddam Hussein is going to come around. We could have taken him out, of course, at that time, but we didn't want him. He's the kind of strong man we like. He controls his people. We thought he could control the Kurds and keep the Iranians in their border and keep pumping oil for us. And then once we took out his military, now he's going to come around. So the economic hitmen go back in the 90s without success. If they'd had success, he'd still be running the country. We'd be selling him all the fighter jets he wants and everything else he wants. But they couldn't. They didn't have success. The Jackals couldn't take him out again. So we sent the military in once again, and this time we did the complete job and took him out, and in the process created for ourselves some very, very lucrative construction
took out Saddam.
deals. Had to reconstruct a country that we'd essentially destroyed, which is a pretty good deal if you own construction companies, big ones. So, Iraq shows the three stages. The economic hitmen failed there, the Jackals failed there, and as a final measure, the military goes in.
Military goes in. If you fail in the other stages,
and in that way, we've really
and
created
in the
an
military.
empire, but we've done it very, very subtly. It's clandestine. All the empires of the past were built on the military, and everybody knew they were building them. So the British knew they were building them, the French, the Germans, the Romans, the Greeks, and they were proud of it. And they always had some excuse, like spreading civilization, spreading some religion, something like that. But they knew they were doing it. We don't. The majority of the people in the United States have no idea that we're living off the benefits of a clandestine empire, that today there's more slavery in the world than ever before.
Who you calling the clandestine? Who he's calling the clandestine empire is the satanic contra-humans. They are who are behind it all. And when they can't get you through economic sanctions, as they said, the economic hitman measures, when they can't get you to cooperate, they come in with the military. That is just a little introduction. But there is enough information from many commentators to really show, and that's where we're going now. We're going to the next clip to show more on this point, that it is really that behind it. There is an article. Now, I remember, and by the way, I should have said this early, this is no sanctioning of Mr. Chavez or Mr. Maduro or any of these dictators, wherever they are. We have spoken out where they have done their people wrong. We have shown their socialistic, communistic policies against their own people's rights and freedoms, etc. And we don't take that back. But not because they have their evils and their problems mean you must do this to them. Let the people work it out. But America behave like they're the world police and they're the world bully and come in with their brazenness now more than ever because they are standing with the sins of Israel and destroying whatever moral conscience they're supposed to have, having stood with them in their genocide. In Palestine, they're displaying these traits, like if they are contra-humans too. The real issue is not the drugs. It's the resources, it's the oil. I may have been bringing this prematurely, but I will show it still because we're coming off of that first clip. But after this, I will go back to one where we get a overview of what has been happening and we look at the Caribbean, right? The issue with who is behind it is coming, so stay tuned. Let's look at this. There may be one or two still pictures in between. I will pause and read off what is there for you and so on, okay? But people are not ignorant. Their propaganda is not working. People know what is really going on. Thank God.
Then we have July. Venezuela exported some 844,000 barrels per day of crude and fuel in June, an 8% increase from the previous month, as the loss of U.S. and European markets were offset by more cargoes sent to China. Washington in late May terminated a group of licenses that had authorized partners of oil company PDVSA, including Chevron and Repsol, to take Venezuelan crude bound for U.S. and European refineries. The state firm had ramped up exports to Asia since. selling its crude and fuel through little-known intermediaries that make deals with independent refiners in China. The cargoes include shipments of Boscan heavy crude, which was previously exported by Chevron to the United States. A total of 27 tankers departed from Venezuelan waters in June, carrying an average of 844,000 barrels per day of crude and refined products and 233,000 metric tons of byproducts. Oil exports averaged about 779,000 per day in May. Then just last month, 2 tankers chartered by Chevron carrying Venezuelan crude reached U.S. waters on Thursday, marking the first U.S. imports of the South American country's oil following a new license granted by Washington. U.S. Treasury Department last month issued a restricted license to Chevron, allowing the U.S. company to operate in the OPEC country and export its oil after a 3-month pause, triggered by more strict policies towards sanctioned Venezuela. The Mediterranean Voyager and Canopus Voyager loaded Venezuelan Boscan and Jamaica crudes earlier this month after negotiations with PDVSA, which is Chevron's partner. The tanker planned to discharge in Port Arthur, Texas, and New Orleans. 2 other Chevron cargoes that set sail from Venezuela this month also are on their way to the United States. Chevron's chief executive, Mike Wirth, early this month said that the flow of Venezuelan oil to the U.S. would resume in August in limited volumes. Chevron, which is in the first quarter, exported some 252,000 barrels per day of Venezuelan oil to the U.S., typically processes a portion of the crude at its own refineries and sells the rest to independent refiners, including U.S. Valero Energy and PBF Energy. Venezuela government has rejected the U.S. sanctions, and they said this amounts to an economic war against the nation. All right, so confusing to many out here. Why is it we have a large naval force and presence off the coast of Venezuela? We have sanctioned Venezuelan oil. We are upset about the transfer of Venezuelan oil to China. And then last month, we took 2 fully loaded oil tankers of Venezuelan oil in the United States. Well, a couple of things are at play here. Number one, Venezuelan crude is perfect for our refineries in the United States. We're used to cracking basically a very heavy type of crude oil. Unfortunately, the type of oil we're pulling from the U.S. through fracking is a much lighter type. It doesn't work very well inside our refineries. So one of the things we have to do is get this heavier oil. So we're literally in this weird situation in the U.S. of exporting crude oil and importing crude oil at the same time. I mean, they're literally passing each other through the Yucatan Strait. It's a weird thing. Now the U.S. has this large military presence off the coast of Venezuela.
So that was the limit of that particular clip, right? But essentially, and the next slide after this will show, they want Venezuela's oil. And it is even being explained that the nature of the oil coming from Venezuela is one that the U.S. needs it, meaning it is better than what they have, right? Now, you see this here on your screen, and if you don't have a bigger screen, it may be very fine. But it was made by Gen X Girl. It was her attempt to show over the years, from since like the 1800s coming down, the different people who were in power in Venezuela. Okay, she comes right down, she touches Chavez, Maduro, and so on. Different people who were in power in Venezuela and how they took power and the different coups that were conducted, the position that the U.S. took in each case, where they sometimes would support what they were called democratically elected persons. Other times they would oppose. They were behind the coups. She did this extensive work and she wanted to show it. You could go on her page on X and you could find it and you could check it out, right? So for example, she talks about how when Chavez was elected, okay, in 1999 to 2013, he took power democratically elected, briefly overthrown, right? They opposed his election. She shows the U.S. position on that side, right? In 2002, Pedro Carmona, he was briefly in power. He took power through a coup that was U.S.-backed against Chavez. They supported that, of course, because they've been involved behind the scenes. There's a clip. I don't have it to show here tonight. But it shows somebody was like tracking over the years, the different presidents, Bush, Obama, all of them doing the same thing in these South American countries, including Trump in his first term, who tried to get Venezuela's oil as well. In fact, he boasted about it, that they had oil, and if we could get it, we would get all that oil. In his first term, you know, right? But he didn't get through. Okay? So here he is, barely just started. We're just going for a year since he's back in office, since he's in office again, a second term, and he's back on Venezuela's case again. Of course, motivated by you know who. All right, let me let it go to the next picture. Right, look at this. Trump understands that the U.S. needs Venezuelan oil. This is an article from January 29th, 2025. I'm going to read a statement from Brother Medina shortly. It says here the U.S. needs Venezuelan oil because its heavy crude is essential for many Gulf Coast refineries, which are designed to process this type of crude and cannot run efficiently on lighter domestic oils alone. Venezuelan oil also provides much needed slack in global supply and offers a strategic alternative to other heavy crude sources, which can be disrupted, other heavy crude sources, which can be disrupted by geopolitical factors like sanctions or tariffs, right? They're greedy, they're wicked, they buy like anybody else, do business. You want to steal it. You want to rob the people. You want to overthrow their governments and claim lies about them. And one of the lies, call them terrorists, narcotics terrorists. Hear what Brother Medina said. Once they designate a person as a terrorist, the mainstream media will be sure to repeat this over and over again so that that stain can never be removed from you. You see that? Once they designate a person a terrorist, the mainstream media will be sure to repeat this over and over again. And that is part of the lying, right? The propaganda, right, Brother Medina? The lying traits of the spawn of the devil, right? The contra humans. The mainstream media, once they designate you as a terrorist, the mainstream media will be sure to repeat this over and over again so that that stain can never be removed from you. And I said to him, I said, this means that this will come for us too. In some form or another, this is going to come for us as Christians too. I believe in the past, we saw things like that they had like certain Christian groups and churches listed and naming them as terrorists. It's coming, brethren, it's coming. Let's continue. This is all about the oil here. This is what we get in, right? Economic
Meanwhile,
war.
this story, Venezuela.
Listen.
War with Venezuela is barreling towards a reality. The Mockingbird media, once again, and Republican neocons are in lockstep, like Senator Lindsey Graham. Why the hell are they still giving this guy airtime? Guy pushing for war in Ukraine, pushing for war in Iran, now pushing for war in Venezuela. They are manufacturing consent for war all across the airwaves as we speak, trying to convince all of us that Venezuela is the largest purveyor of drugs flowing into the United States. Listen to Sean Hannity laugh it up with Senator Lindsey Graham over the idea that Venezuela should become the 51st state of America after we occupy them. Watch.
I had a chat with you this weekend, and I thought you had a pretty darn good idea. And you said you were going to share it with the president. I want to know if you did. And that is this opposition leader in Venezuela that won the Nobel Prize that said it really deserved to go to Donald Trump. Sounds like a pretty good leader to me for the people of Venezuela and the end of narco-terrorism and a better relationship with the U.S. Or if they choose maybe the 51st state, I don't know.
Oh,
sounds good to me, but the opposite.
What? You hear what they're joking about? Making Venezuela the 51st state. They want to take over the place. You see how they're out of place and hate national sovereignty and hate the independent state? That was a meme somebody made. Venezuela is a socialist hellhole. We want Venezuela as a 51st state. That is what he and Lindsey Graham was joking about. So, redacted continues. You see, brethren?
That is maniacal.
Yeah, he'd be a great leader for their country. Donald Trump be a great leader for Venezuela. What do you guys think about that?
You want to hear something funny? There once was a constitutional amendment to rename the United States of America to the United States of Earth because some early U.S. politicians thought it'd be a great idea to just keep going, just keep expanding the United States until it was one big nation state all around the globe. So this seems to be what's happening, even though that constitutional amendment failed.
Right. We just install puppet governments so we don't get to claim that we're colonialists, yet we control their entire government like in Ukraine and other parts of the world. Go ahead, Philip or David.
That was me. And Trump is doing a fundraiser for Lindsey Graham, and he's out here bashing Rand Paul and Thomas Massey.
Yeah. The first person that Trump went on to do this sort of tour around the country to start campaigning for people. The first person, he goes to South Carolina to campaign for Lindsey Graham. Disgusting. Now, President Trump this morning just admitted that there is a 9th war coming. This isn't a slip of the tongue. He said it multiple times during this little interview here, this little press gaggle today. He says that he's ended 8 wars so far as president of the United States, and a 9th one is coming soon.
It's going to be tough to beat, Mr. Senator. It's going to be, John, it's going to be very tough to beat Washington and Lincoln, but we're going to give it a try, right? Hey, they didn't put out 8 wars, 9 coming, all right? We put out 8 wars, and the 9th is coming, believe it or not.
Let's applaud. By the way, which 8 wars? Which 8 wars are now completely over? Like, is the Ukraine war over?
No.
Okay. But which 8 wars are done now? And which is the 9th war? Clearly, it looks like it's Venezuela. But, take your pick. Maybe it's China. Maybe it's Iran. But my money is on Venezuela. All signs are pointing to that when the mainstream media is now manufacturing consent for war in lockstep with the Trump administration and the Republican neocons. So to hear it from the Trump administration, though, all the drugs pouring in the United States are coming from Venezuela. Nice. Therefore, we can just indiscriminately bomb people's boats in Venezuelan waters without letting us know anything about them, who's actually on board these boats, or submarines. Like this one, a drug-carrying submarine that was navigating towards the United States on a well-known narco-trafficking transit route.
Look.
Today, U.S. intelligence said this submarine was loaded with fentanyl.
That's what it
So
say.
take their word for it. Just take their word for it. I love how conservatives mostly
And they
hate
just
the
bomb
FBI
it.
and the CIA,
You see
and they
that?
don't trust anything the government says. But when they tell us these boats are all drug runners, we eat it up like lapdogs. Like, don't question them. CIA told us. The CIA told us
Bring
that
the
these were
proof.
drug-running ships. So just believe everything they say. It's all over Fox News. Don't you see it? Yeah, CIA, we trust you.
You see that?
Not as far as we can throw you. One of your favorite hobbies is regime change operations, so we'll believe anything you tell us. It's madness. Maybe these boats have, to have drugs. Does that mean we should also invade their country as well?
Good question.
Because it won't stop with the boats. Massive amounts of fentanyl are pouring in from Canadian ports from China, and Canada isn't doing anything to stop it. Maybe we should invade Canada as well. What about Mexico?
See?
What about Colombia,
Why you
which is the
targeting
biggest
Venezuela?
offender? I don't hear any discussions about Colombia.
See?
What about Nicaragua? What about Honduras? But it's Venezuela. Turns out, according to Colonel Douglas McGregor, the whole drug argument is a lie. It's just It's cover up for Venezuela. It's just cover up because Venezuela accounts for very little of the drugs coming into the United States. It's really about stealing their oil and their gold.
That's it.
No one is asking hard questions about the real purpose of American military action against Venezuela or the potential strategic impact on the United States, good or bad. Most people in the Senate seem to privately think, well, Venezuela could be an opportunity for Washington to recover trillions in wealth squandered on failed U.S. military interventions in the Middle East and Ukraine.
You hearing that?
In fact, when I listen to people talk about Venezuela, they sound as though they're ready to climb into their Viking boats, sail down to Venezuela, steal everything that they need and want without regard to what happens to the population. Because all they talk about is Venezuela's oil and gas, its gold mines, its emerald mines. There isn't much discussion, frankly, on the Hill or inside the Beltway about the alleged role that Venezuela plays in drug and human trafficking because, frankly, it's very small. Colombia is much more heavily involved, as is Mexico.
Yeah, so you don't hear about Colombia and you're not hearing about Mexico. But Venezuela will invade.
No puede usarse.
You see? So they know, people know it's about the oil, it's about their reserves, it's about their wealth. They want to steal and they're lying. Because as you will see in different clips, the amount of drugs passing through Venezuela or whatever, it's nothing compared to, say, Colombia and other places. So why are you targeting Venezuela in particular? And besides, the fentanyl problem is not from Venezuela. Are we saying Venezuela is innocent and doesn't have any evil. No, we're not saying that. You still have no right to deal with it like that. Capture the boats, capture them, show us the drugs that you found. Show the world. But you want to be judge, jury, and executioner all in one time. Nobody could tell you anything. You do whatever you want. And as Clayton said there, what is stopping them from going beyond the boats? What is stopping them from invading your country? What about the other places where they have the drug problem really from? We're not hearing about them. You see? Now this one, Colombia's Petro, the leader, he is speaking in Spanish, right? So I will seek to read what is on the screen. Starts off by saying, the weapons of any army in the world cannot be used against humanity. I said it on the streets of New York, I repeat it on this program, and even less so in the Caribbean Sea. One moment. And even less so against innocent Colombians and fishermen. What's happening in the United States is that fentanyl consumption is growing. It's domestic policy the United States to adopt it to save its society, but by addressing the issue in the Caribbean Sea, which has nothing to do with fentanyl, what the United States is demonstrating is that what it wants is the oil of Venezuela and Guyana. Greed is behind this strategy. Oil greed is behind this strategy of dropping missiles on fishermen. Fishermen on the island of Trinidad and Tobago have already died under a missile. There's a video of a boat that wasn't sailing at sea, but had its engines up and was therefore stationary and was hit by a missile. There are young fishermen with their homes in Santa Marta and haven't returned. And we see what happened to them. Because if what's happening, pardon me, I'm having a little difficulty. Because if what's happening is that any Colombian have died under the missiles, I have asked all human rights lawyers to help us establish corresponding international and national demands and complaints in case Colombians have been killed by the missiles. I asked President Trump to curb his oil greed. See that? Then we have Evo Morales, another leader. I think it's Guatemala. Can't remember now. But he said, the U.S. isn't fooling anyone. The U.S. doesn't care about democracy in Venezuela. It only cares about looting its oil. This is a meme. To do this, as in Iraq and Libya, it provokes conflict, destabilizes, and intervenes militarily. Right? That is what the economic hitman told us they do. You see? Yes, it's a sin, the copying from Israel. You see, when you stand with Israel's sins, you take on their traits as well. And you do the same evil, the same wickedness, the same satanic behavior. Here's Maduro speaking, president of Venezuela. He said, there are 8 destroyer warships in the Caribbean. That's never been seen before. 1,200 missiles pointed at our heads. They have a nuclear submarine. Brethren, you hearing this? You hearing what is near to you? Week after week after week, Brother Medina had been telling us, God has been stopping nuclear war. God has been actually holding back. Week after week, we have been avoiding nuclear war. You hear the kind of weapons, the kind of vehicles, the kind of armory they have. He says 1,200 missiles pointed at our heads.
1,200 misiles apuntando a nuestras cabezas.
They have a nuclear submarine. And now they say they are also in Puerto Rico. The head of the Pentagon arrived in Puerto Rico. And the governor of Puerto Rico said that Puerto Rico was the base for military operation against Venezuela. They're after many things. The first thing they're after is oil, not drug trafficking. It's oil. You hear that? Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves. You hear that, brethren? I will tell you what else they have.
Venezuela tiene la principal reserva de petróleo del mundo. Tiene la cuarta
And the
reserva
fourth
de gas.
largest gas
Está en todo el
reserves,
Caribe,
which are in the
precisamente,
Caribbean,
donde esta gente mandó la flota.
precisely where the
Y
US
Venezuela
has
tiene-
their fleet. Venezuela have the world's largest oil reserves and the fourth largest gas reserves in the Caribbean, precisely where the US sent their
la-
fleet.
la
Do you see the
flota.
real reason?
Y Venezuela
And
tiene
Venezuela
lo que pudiera
has
ser la
what
primera
could be the
reserva
world's
de oro del
largest
mundo.
gold
Y
reserves
así por el
and so
estilo.
on. So
Así
the US
que el imperio
empire
estadounidense se
is
está
playing a
jugando
dangerous card
una carta peligrosa
for
para
our
nuestra
region,
región, pero
a
peligrosa
dangerous for
para
them
ellos
as well.
también. Y
And
además
it's an
es una
extremist
carta
card too.
extremista. No
We
pueden
can't say
decirle
about Maduro
que tiene
that he
armas
has
de
weapons
destrucción
of mass
masiva.
destruction.
Entonces sacan
So
los
they bring their
relatos que han sacado
Hollywood
hollywoodenses,
stories,
donde
which
Maduro es el
Maduro
malo
is
de
the
la
bad
película
guy,
y los
and
buenos
they
son
are the good
ellos.
guys,
Y entonces
and
van a
they're going
mandar
to
a su
send their
ejército,
army.
buscan
You
por la
see, to
vía
use military
de la intimidación
intimidation
militar, sacar la
to
cara
deter, sorry, to
por la
defend
ultraderecha, por la
far right, far right, the extreme right. So you see what he's saying here? He knows what's going on. He said they can't say I have weapons of mass destruction. So they bring up their stories and they paint me as the bad guy, paint them as the good guy. He claims to defend the far right, the extreme right. We know all of them are communists who they're defending. It's communists, those spawn of Satan over there. And Trump is right though. What Bram didn't say? Right though, left side. Because he come in like a right though. He come in like a America first. And all we see now is communist behavior, anti-rights and anti-freedoms behavior. All we see now is Israel first behavior.
extrema derecha por los intereses imperiales, porque internamente
So he is saying that they're defending extreme right, the imperialists, because internally we have defeated
los
them
hemos derrotado
on
en
every
todos los
level.
planos.
Sean
Right.
Hannity and
So
Lindsey
that's like what the economic hitman was saying. If you can't get them with sanctions, economic measures, and so on, you go in militarily. And Maduro is acknowledging that they haven't been able to get them to bow. So they come in now with the military might. But I hope you recognize, brethren, what kind of weapons and things they have. They have nuclear submarine in the waters. 1,200, which is 1,200 missiles pointed at our heads, as Maduro said. You and I have seen through the images, videos that Bromdina has shown us what nuclear war could be like. You know how those things spread for miles and miles and miles and poison people and kill them. None of us will escape if that were to happen. It is the mercy of God keeping it back. You could imagine in 2025 in October, you and me in these little Caribbean islands are facing this because of the spawns of Satan and their hatred of Jesus Christ, their rejection of him, and their influence upon America to become a threat to the entire world. The tentacles have reached us.
Internamente los hemos derrotado en todos los planos.
Sean Hannity and Lindsey Graham openly joked on Fox News about plunging us into a regional war in South America in order to get rid of Nicolas Maduro.
I had a chat with you this weekend, and I thought you had a pretty darn good idea, and you said you were going to share it with the president. I want to know if you did, and that is this opposition leader in Venezuela that won the Nobel Prize that said it really deserved to go to Donald Trump. Sounds like a pretty good leader to me for the people of Venezuela and the end of narco-terrorism and a better relationship with the U.S. Or if they choose maybe the 51st state, I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
Look at how psychotic these neocons are. Just casually joking about destabilizing an entire region and engaging in regime change that will lead to the death of thousands of people. And notice how they are supportive of Maria Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who is calling for United States intervention in her own country of Venezuela.
What? What? We come into her just now. But did you hear what this man is saying here? The woman who just won the Nobel Peace Prize, Maria Corina Machado, she's the opposition person in Venezuela. She was praising Israel and calling them to intervene, calling on Netanyahu to intervene in Venezuela. And that is who they are praising and lifting up and give her Nobel Peace Prize winner. Could you imagine that? Or why are they so against Maduro? I could tell you he's not kissing up to them as she did.
The people. And notice how they are supportive of Maria Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who is calling for United States intervention in her own country of Venezuela. This is how you know the establishment is all in with the war on Venezuela, which is why Democrats have been failing to call this out. Some Democrats criticize the boat strikes and the tactics that Donald Trump is using, but they still 100% support regime change. Hands off Venezuela, you imperialist scum. Poll after poll shows the American people are tired of endless war, and they oppose regime change war against the Venezuelan people. But the ruling class is still obsessed with waging never-ending war because we live in a Catholic dictatorship where the American people do not get what they want. We need to build an anti-war movement, and we need to build it yesterday.
But what I will tell you, as I pause here, even Grok knows that. I asked Grok last night, which country has the most, actually somebody asked Grok, which country, I asked it too, which country has the most proven reserve of oil in the world? Here, Grok, according to recent data from sources like EIA and BP, Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, estimated at around 303 billion barrels as of 2025. You see? Let me read a little piece from an article. This article is called The Hidden Story of U.S. Interest in Venezuela, an Economic Hit Job. This was done by Gen X Girl. Her ex handle is Gen X Girl 1994, right? At Gen X Girl 1994. And she posted this on September the 6th, 2025. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I would like to read for you this portion. Here's what she said. Under the subheading, why does the U.S. care so much about Venezuela? It's all about the oil and minerals. U.S. refineries need Venezuela's thick or heavy crude oil to blend with lighter domestic oil from the Gulf to process effectively. As recently as August, the U.S. imported Venezuelan oil. As recently as August. The goal is also control. Western companies like Chevron want exclusive rights to Venezuela's vast reserves, ensuring none go to rivals like China. For over a century, the U.S. has orchestrated coups and for the past 20 years, imposed over 900 sanctions to pressure Venezuela's government by punishing its people into submission and pushing for regime change. Secondary sanctions on countries importing Venezuelan oil force Venezuela to smuggle its crude through third parties who rebrand it to evade restrictions. Even now, U.S. military presence in the Atlantic aims to block Venezuelan oil shipments. You see the wickedness they're doing? Even now, U.S. military presence in the Atlantic aims to block Venezuelan oil shipments, deepening poverty to pave the way for a puppet leader like Maria Machado, who promises to open Venezuela to global corporate interests. And you will hear her herself promising that to Trump's son. Okay? Right. The next paragraph. Yes, Sister Ria, I agree. The first time I came across her was when I was dealing with the HR 6090 bill on anti-Semitism, and I got a lot of material from her page. Okay? Hear this paragraph, and that's why I tell you it's not just oil and it's not just gas. Listen to this. Venezuela is also rich in natural gas and minerals. Venezuela has large deposits of bauxite for aluminum, iron ore, coal, and gold, which our government sanctioned in 2024. The country, listen to this, the country also has reserves of diamonds, nickel, and coltan, as well as other minerals like copper, uranium, phosphates, zinc, and various non-metallic minerals such as kaolin, salt, and marble. Are you hearing this? In fact, our famous global looter, Elon Musk, set his eyes on Venezuela's untapped uranium deposits in the Roraima Basin for his SpaceX dreams to Mars. See my article on this under the article tab. Venezuela does not export natural gas to the global economy. The nation had more than 5.6 trillion cubic meters of proven natural gas reserves in 2021. In the Western Hemisphere, only the United States had more reserves. That's for the natural gas. So you see, this is what is going on. Listen to all these rich minerals Venezuela has. Bauxite, iron ore, coal, gold, nickel, diamonds, coltan, copper, uranium, phosphate, zinc, and other non-metallic minerals like kaolin, salt, and marble. And they have more oil than Saudi Arabia. Okay, I got it back now. Thanks. He posted it back. He said, this is our news channels on Telegram. Brother Aaron Alexander, he said, it was discovered that Venezuela also has rare earth materials, which is needed for smart devices and weaponry and AI. China exports 90% of the rare earth materials. It will be a huge advantage if America controls Venezuela minerals. You see that? That is this comment I saw that disappeared from my eyesight, and I wanted to read it. Thank you, Brother Aaron.
Would you assume is the most major threat on the world stage?
Definitely Russia.
No, however, this person did this clip, they kind of sped it up. Didn't get a chance to try to slow it down. But just try to listen, right? Because the guy is making the point about how rich Venezuela is and how most people don't really look at them as a threat because they don't know. A threat meaning to those who want control, who have greed, lust for money, and so on. Listen.
What would you assume is the most major threat on the world stage?
Definitely Russia.
Definitely Russia. Who else? China. Stop yelling at me, but China is a good answer. Venezuela? Anybody? Everybody's cool with Venezuela? No threat? Okay. Which one of these places can claim to have the largest oil deposit on the planet? More than Saudi? More than Iran? Wow. Okay, what about things like gold? More than all the mines in Africa combined? Venezuela is arguably the single greatest resource of oil and minerals on the planet. So, why is this country in the midst of one of the greatest humanitarian crises in modern history? On the news, they'll call it a crisis. But on the world stage, they'll call it a failed state. Other examples of a failed state in recent history are Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. And if that's not bad enough news for you, well, Venezuela is also the only one of these places within 30-minute range from the U.S. of next-gen nuclear missiles. You will not hear about any of this on the news because the biggest players on the world stage do not want you to. Russia, China, can never be the most major threat until countries like Venezuela leave the door open to our very own backyard.
So while his perspective may be to, paint Venezuela as a threat to them because of what it could bring in, what I wanted you to hear from it is the fact that he understands how rich Venezuela is. Look at this meme. Okay, like I said, I had no control over the rate of that video. It came like that. Look at this meme. Countries with the largest proven oil reserves. Okay, who has the most? Venezuela, 303 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia at 267. You see that? More than Iraq, more than Kuwait. Okay, more than Iran, more than even Russia, more than Canada. These are the things that they know. They're greedy. They want the people money. They want their oil. They want their resources. They want control. Okay?
YouTube just banned the account of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Now, YouTube did this not because President Maduro said anything that was particularly wrong or offensive or in violation of YouTube's community guidelines. They did this because President Maduro was using YouTube, like Instagram and other platforms, to communicate to a Western audience that Venezuela is not the enemy of the American people. The only people who are trying to convince the American public that Venezuela Venezuela is your enemy are those who have a vested interest in seeing the Maduro government fall. Venezuela controls the largest oil reserves out of any country on earth, and it's not even close. And don't even get me started on the amount of raw resources that they control, like gold and other precious metals that are used for the military-industrial complex and the tech sector. The reason why they're choosing to ban President Maduro's YouTube account is because Americans were beginning to wake up to the fact that, hey, Venezuela is actually a Christian country. Venezuela is also a country that has a strong love for what we know in the United States as the Second Amendment. Not to mention, Venezuela's national heroes literally participated in the 1776 revolution of America from Great Britain. United States wants a war with Venezuela, of course, in part to distract us about all the crazy things that are going on right now that the Trump administration is covering up, but also to illegally seize their raw resources and their oil, which would make billionaires in the United States much, much richer. They want to eradicate sovereignty and freedom in Venezuela, and they understand that they can't manipulate the minds of the Venezuelan people through Instagram or TikTok or YouTube to do this. They can't propagandize the Venezuelan public into believing that sovereignty somehow doesn't serve their own interests. Therefore, they're going to wage an all-out war against Venezuela. And how do you do that? By eliminating the narrative that is truthful, that is coming from the Venezuelan people, that is seeking peace, that is offering and extending an olive branch to the American public, which is exactly what the YouTube channel of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was doing.
Yeah, why you do that? Why remove the man's YouTube channel? Let him talk. But the propaganda war, the lying, you want to target everybody as terrorists and repeat that over and over, and people will believe it. And he was clearing things up. He was answering for himself and saying on his YouTube channel that this is not so. These are the facts here. This is the reality, etc. So what? YouTube takes him down. You see? And that's what Bernardino was saying earlier about the mainstream media and, of course, these mainstream social media, them being used to facilitate the propaganda, which is the lying traits of the contra-humans, which is the lying of Satan. Brother Aaron is giving us some more information. Brother Aaron of our news channels, Anna and Tuesday in Review and Apocalypse Media in Telegram. Sister Nisa, Venezuela before Hugo Chavez was in the top 10 richest countries in the world. Communism destroyed that in a decade. I saw one or two other clips where people were seeking to show how rich they were early, and then they just dropped down so low. You see? The same Gen X girl, she had a lot of material. I couldn't bring everything. So you hear what Brother Aaron is saying? You and I know that communism is never good for our country, right? We know that. You want to nationalize everything. You stifle the people from their individual pursuits, you know? Communism is against individuality and freedoms and so on. And oh boy, are they against freedom of speech and criticism, and they censor a lot their opponents, right? So you may be rich, you may have the wealth, the materials, but your own policy could be to the detriment of you. Look at the African countries, the corruption among leaders. Venezuela is an economic hit job. Here's a portion, just a portion, from Jimmy Dore.
Offering and extending an olive branch to the American public, which is exactly what the YouTube channel of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was doing.
As soon as you find out that Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia, you know why Donald Trump tried to overthrow Venezuela in his first term, why the United States government has been trying to overthrow them for 30 years, and why he's trying to do it again, and he's doing it under the guise of fighting drugs. Here's what he said.
When you come out and when you leave the room, you'll see that we just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that and you'll be reading about that. It just happened moments ago. And we have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela. And coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So
yeah, oil.
We took it out, and you'll get to see that.
after this meeting is over.
Listen to this
So I'm going to
lying
show you
man.
why that's a lie, what he's saying about the drugs coming out of Venezuela. But first, I'm going to show you the real reason that Donald Trump and every president has been trying to overthrow
Listen,
Venezuela.
listen
And
to
here he
this.
is going to admit it. Donald Trump admits it, what it's all about. They want to steal their oil.
Listen.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
You hear that? You hear that clip? Looky right there was confessing what he wanted. Look at there. And yet they coming with a talk now about narcotics, terrorists, and drugs. Your propaganda. You're lying. And you don't care what your lies will do. You lie to justify your war, and then you're putting people at risk. You're putting people's lives, these little islands. We can't deal with no nuclear strikes in our backyards. But they don't care because they destroy your conscience standing with people who are conscienceless because they rejected love, Jesus Christ. They're contrary to all of humanity. And people know this. Listen to Trump again. Don't buy the lie. Listen to him again. You're talking about plenty things coming out of Venezuela, drugs and this and that.
Venezuela.
But listen to the
and
real
coming out
reason.
very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So
Yeah, oil.
we took it out, and you'll get to see that after this meeting is over.
So I'm going to show you why that's a lie, what he's saying about the drugs coming out of Venezuela. But first, I'm going to show you the real reason that Donald Trump and every president has been trying to overthrow Venezuela. And here he is going to admit it. Donald Trump admits it, what it's all about. They want to steal their oil.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
Unmute. Sorry. You hear him? When I left, they were about to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil next door. You see? One last time, I'm playing it over. I'm playing it over one last time. One last time. Listen.
Why that's a lie, what he's saying about the drugs coming out of Venezuela. But first, I'm going to show you the real reason that Donald Trump and every president has been trying to overthrow Venezuela. And here he is going to admit it. Donald Trump admits it, what it's all about. They want to steal their oil.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
So that's why they put economic sanctions on Venezuela. That's why they want to get rid of Maduro. It's because they want to steal their natural resources. The same reason we overthrew Iran. The same reason we did Iraq. The same reason we did Libya. It's always the same goddamn reason. Donald Trump left troops in Syria. Why? For the oil. And how do I know that? He said so. And here's why what he said about the drugs coming out of Venezuela isn't true.
Watch.
For reference, this is a picture showing actual data about drug routes from the U.S. government themselves. Note how Venezuela is indeed the place where drugs do not flow to the USA. Once again, this is according to the U.S. own official data. Let me put it.
Watch this.
It's
screen.
not coming. Here's Venezuela. Drugs are not coming from Venezuela to the United States, ladies and gentlemen.
You see that?
Latin America narcotics connection, maritime trafficking. This is Venezuela. This is where the drugs are coming from. That's August 31st, 2025. This is their own data.
U.S. own
This
data.
is Venezuela. This is where the drugs are coming from. So the drug cartel state is actually Ecuador, but it's a U.S. vassal, so who cares?
Lying.
Declassified video showing the U.S. committed a war crime when it fired on a civilian vessel near Venezuela. Being suspected of carrying drugs does not carry a death sentence, and certainly not one without due process.
That's right.
So there's this boat that they say was carrying. Look at this boat. This is the boat they said that they blew up because it was carrying drugs. You see how tiny that boat? I thought it was going to be like a giant ship. It's a literal little boat. The difference between a boat and a ship. That's a boat. And they say, oh, it was full of drugs. So, and by the way, they say that anyway, Justin Amash. He says Congress has not authorized military hostilities against Venezuela. There's no exception permitting unilateral action because it's drugs or terrorism or a designated organization. The peace president strikes again. Here it is from the AP. Trump says U.S. strike on vessel in Caribbean targeted Venezuela's Tren de Agua gang and killed 11 people. Well, guess what? Former Philippine President Duterte is in custody in The Hague right now. Why? Because he's being charged by the International Criminal Court for ordering the summary execution of alleged drug traffickers. Trump just ordered the summary execution of 11 alleged drug traffickers.
What is this picture? What is this picture? This picture is...
Then we have July. Venezuela exported...
is a meme of like what somebody did to show what usually is the result when they finish with you. See? Iraq before, Iraq after. Libya before, Libya after. Syria before, Syria after. Yugoslavia before and after. Yemen. Yeah? And the person posted it and said in their description, Venezuela next. And Sister Karima, I got your message. Sister Karima was reminding me of what she was talking about when she asked me the question when I told her I could not remember. And she's right. She pointed out to me this article of a story that came out some years ago where St. Vincent's government was joining up, signing an agreement with the Clinton Foundation to harvest, to seek to study or explore the possibility of getting geothermal energy from our volcano, right? So as I told her, they were scoping out our wealth to see what we may have that we haven't, like dug for or drilled for before, right? So that is what she was trying to remember when she spoke. It shows that, this is what is usually done. This is what they usually do. Sickening. This is the experience of contra humans. This is the influence. This is the lying and the murdering traits of Satan. In this clip, right? There are two clips inside here, which they just bring up words on the screen with some music behind, with it. I want to show them because I want you to see visually some of the kind of military moves and the things that could be a reality around you any day now, if this is allowed, right? So I want to show this for this purpose, okay? It starts off with Trump being asked by a journalist, because you have to realize this was a part of reality here. All the things he wants to take from Venezuela. Venezuela so don't want war. Maduro even tried to speak English at one point to say, no war, peace, no war. That he offer him everything, so to speak. And Trump still going after Venezuela. So what really is the issue? Listen to the exchange with the journalists, and then we go into some of the reports.
Mr. President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to f around with the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You hear that? You hear that? What kind of unreasonable wickedness is this? The president is admitting, the journalists are aware that Maduro offered everything, resources, mediation, everything. Trump said, yeah, he offered everything. So then why this behavior? And what all he could say? Curse, obscenity, and say he offered everything because he doesn't want the F word around the United States. That's what and thank you, everybody. That is a president's answer. You don't care if you're unreasonable before the world. You know you want the oil. They'll keep offering you, but they don't want him there. They want they want control. Let me play it again for you if you didn't hear it good. Listen.
Mr. President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to f around with the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys. Let's go.
Yes, Sister Ria. The person who put the clip together, they seek to edit it out. Yes, he cursed the raw word. Right? He cursed the raw word. That is what he did. Observe. I'm going to read for you as best as I can. U.S. strike. Let me take down the music. U.S. strike in Caribbean sinks boat. So this is what has been happening. This is what has been reported to you in Trinidad and so on. This is what we have been learning happened. They're giving you some reports on it and showing you what is happening. U.S. strike in Caribbean sinks boat. Al-Qaeda of Western Hemisphere. Do you know that's what they're doing now? They brand you a terrorist. They're branding the people on the boats and Venezuela, the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere. You see that? XF confirms terror boat hit, says it carried Colombian guerrillas. Seventh strike in 6 weeks show U.S. escalation in Latin waters. You see, and you see in the imagery, you're seeing how they literally blow up the things. U.S. deploys 10,000 troops and elite night stalkers near Venezuela. Look at the kind of warfare, look at the kind of things. U.S. amps up military CIA action against Venezuela. What next? The U.S. military struck another suspected drug vessel, killing 3 on October 17th. So just up to recently. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth confirmed the attack is a statement on October 19th. They say this strike is a statement we're making. The attacks on the 7th such U.S. strike in the Caribbean since early September. Right. This is something. Okay. Carry it back up. Right. What are we seeing here? Hegseth said that it was linked to the Colombian group Ejército de Liberación Nacional. The boat, right? The strike took place in international waters under the U.S. Southern Command Zone. At least 32 people have been killed in U.S. strikes on drug-linked vessels since August. Pete Hegseth called the cartels the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere. Seventh strike on drug boat. On October 17th, at the direction of President Trump, the Department of War conducted a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel affiliated with Ejército de Liberación Nacional, ELN, designated terrorist organization that was operating in the U.S. Southcom area of responsibility. They call them terrorists. The vessel was known by our intelligence to be involved in illicit narcotics smuggling. Was traveling along unknown, but you didn't give us any proof. You didn't give us any proof that they had narcotics. You just vomit. They were traveling along a known narcotic or narco trafficking route and was transporting substantial amounts of narcotics. That's what they say. There were 3 male narco-terrorists aboard the vessel during the strike, which was conducted in international waters. So they brand them terrorists, as Brother Medina said. And repeat that over and over to justify their interventions, their war, their criminality. All 3 terrorists were killed and no U.S. forces were harmed in this strike. All this is the words, the statement of Hegseth, the Secretary of their Department of War, that they renamed the Department of War recently, because they're all about war. These cartels are the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere, using violence, murder, and terrorism to impose their will to threaten our national security and poison our people. Meanwhile, their own data says, from August says, Venezuela was not the source of drugs coming into America. He continues, the United States military will treat these organizations like the terrorists they are. They will be hunted and killed just like Al-Qaeda. Did you hear that? You hear the kind of language? Brand them as terrorists repeatedly. And you hear the intention? We will hunt them out. We will kill them just like Al-Qaeda. You see what's going on? Fishermen in our waters are concerned. They're concerned that they could just be out there fishing. Suppose they run into trouble and the boat drifts. And they're waiting for some help. They're concerned now that they could be caught up in it. They could be attacked. This is wickedness. Who will stop America? Trump's war on the cartels. The strikes come as Trump hardens his policy on Latin America's narcotic networks. So they say. The US president has authorized the CIA to operate inside Venezuela. Did you hear that? Trump is also considering military action against Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. The Trump administration calls the campaign a, quote, non-international armed conflict, end quote. When they're loaded with drugs, they're fair game, Trump told reporters this week. But how do we know they're loaded with drugs? You're not showing us the evidence, you just bomb them. The White House insists narcotic smuggling constitutes an armed attack on America. You see what they're doing there? But if the drugs are not coming from Venezuela, how could you say they have attacked you? Claiming that narcotic smuggling constitutes an armed attack on America, no. Stop the boats and arrest them and show the world that they were smuggling drugs into your country, but no. That's illegal what they're doing. Last week, Colombian President Gustavo Petro accused the U.S. of hitting a fishing vessel. Trump fired back, calling Petro, quote, an illegal drug leader, and threatened to cut aid. American military's most deadly special ops forces have been deployed to the Caribbean. Did you hear that? American military's most deadly special ops forces have been deployed to the Caribbean. What kind of show of force is that? You have to bring your most deadly special ops? My God. You hearing these things, Sister Karima? And then they're going to tell you the kind of weapons there. Listen, remember we already heard Maduro mention one of it is nuclear submarine. Listen, American military's most deadly special ops forces have been deployed to the Caribbean. Night Stalkers are an elite U.S. Army unit capable of conducting complex military ops. Army Black Hawks and smaller Little Birds undergoing training in Trinidad per reports. Y'all hear that? So look at among the most deadly Night Stalkers, another group they call Army Black Hawk. Another Little Birds. They say they're undergoing training in Trinidad according to reports. You hear this madness? And you know the imagery they're showing used to give you an idea. If you saw another one where they showed, they did a drill or something of how they could use what they call amphibian. You know, you have the big ship out in the water and they have this kind of floaters but they could bring like tanks and other things onto the shore coming in from the sea. Showing all this kind of might, flexing all this kind of muscle, threatening us over lies and greed. The unit files special ops teams, including SEALs, Green Berets, and Delta Force into active war zones. Defense experts say training signals readiness to combat cartels or even the Venezuelan regime. This is another one. Listen to the kind of armory. B-2s. B-2s fly with F-35s near Venezuela. In what? Border attack demo. So they so want to show their power.
Bomber, sister, it's a B-O-M-B-E-R.
Bomber. Thank you, sis. They fly in the things as a demonstration near Venezuela. You know, I don't even think I remember to take down this video. Somebody sent me a small video and I asked them if it was authentic. They said they were still waiting for confirmation, but somebody in Trinidad sent it to them. The guy is in Trinidad himself. But it was a video claiming it was a view from Sanssouci Toko, Grande Riviere, or Grand Riviere. And it was showing what the person was claiming what they could see from where they were filming. And you're seeing this big army ship in the water out at sea and you're seeing helicopters. But I asked the guy if he could authenticate it and he said he was waiting. He was still waiting for authentication, right? So sometimes you may get some of those kinds of things, right? And as very well as it could be true, because here they're reporting that B-2s fly with F-35s near Venezuela in bomber attack demo. Let me see if I could see this better. Colombia recalls U.S. Ambassador. Maduro backs Petro. But it's not coming up the same time, if you notice. Yeah. Ecuador releases survivor of U.S. strike on drug-carrying sub. What they call a drug-carrying sub. We don't know. They never showed the evidence. Ecuador has released a man who survived the U.S. strike last week on what President Trump said was a very large drug-carrying submarine headed for the U.S. The Ecuadorian Attorney General's office said, quote, no report of a crime that has been brought to the attention of this institution against the man. Another survivor of the same strike that killed 2 crew members was sent to his native Colombia, where authorities said he would face prosecution. Interior Minister Armando Benedetti said he had arrived with brain trauma. He was sedated, drugged, and breathing with a ventilator. That is how they sent back the survivor, you know. Trump, on October 18th, bragged about destroying the vessel and labeled the men on board terrorists. Again, the lying labels, we don't know, right? Just to sell the narrative to justify war. In a social media post, he claimed the submarine was loaded with fentanyl and other drugs. Who knows? Where's the evidence? Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters that, quote, so long as they're not bringing poison into our country, end quote, he doesn't, quote, really care what happens to the 2 survivors. See? The callousness. Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa said in a post on X, tagging Trump's account, that his government was determined to fight drug trafficking. Well, everybody running scared. Strategically located between Colombia and Peru, 2 of the world's largest cocaine producers, Ecuador has become a major transit hub for narcotics. Some regional leaders, like Colombia's President Gustavo Petro, have harshly criticized the U.S. attacks. In a post on X, Petro said the U.S. operation was part of a, quote, failed strategy to control Latin America and obtain cheap oil from Venezuela. Since August, Washington has deployed warships off South America and struck at least 7 alleged drug-running boats in raids that killed at least 32 people. Alleged, because we have no proof. Look at the video. The campaign, initially targeting alleged Venezuelan drug trafficking, has recently shifted focus to Colombia. But the real thing is Venezuela they're going after. On October 19th, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth reported 3 killed on an alleged drug-running boat linked to Colombia's ELN. Last month, the U.S. decertified Colombia as a drug-fighting ally, prompting Colombia to halt arms purchases from its top military partner. Colombia recalls officials and the Trump-Petro feud. This is a part of the report here. On October 20th, Colombia recalled its ambassador to the U.S. as tensions with Trump escalated over aid cuts and potential tariffs. So these are the latest days leading up to today. Interior Minister Armando Benedetti called Trump's remarks on forcibly ending drug cultivation, quote, a threat of invasion or military action against Colombia, end quote. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro defended Colombia after Trump threatened the country with tariffs and aid cuts.
Colombia sabe que somos uno solo,
Colombia knows we're one, we're Siamese twins, and whatever has to do with Colombia has to do with Venezuela. And whatever has to do with Venezuela has to do with Colombia, as a Colombian military officer wrote to me 2 weeks ago. If they touch Venezuela, they touch Colombia. We're a single homeland at heart. These aren't just empty words. I know what I'm saying. This was October 20th, these things were said. War. B-2 bombers fly with F-35s near Venezuela. You see the kind of planes, you seeing it on the screen. They're showing you. 3 American B-552H Stratofortress flew alongside Marine Corps F-35s as bomber attack demonstration near Venezuela last week. The trio with call signs Bonnie 1, Bonnie 2, Bonnie 3 flew from Barksdale Air Force Base, LA, into U.S. Southern Command's area of responsibility. They were accompanied by F-35B fighters from Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 225, according to the 2nd Bomb Wing. You could imagine these things in your sight when you look up in the sky. Air Forces Southern also said tankers from MacDill Air Force Base, Florida, provided refueling support for the flight. Bomber attack demonstrations contribute to the collective defense of the Western Hemisphere and demonstrate the U.S. commitment to the safety and security of the region. No, demonstrate you flexing your muscle to mash up everybody if you don't get what you want. That is what you're demonstrating. That is what you're doing. While the Pentagon did not disclose any details on the flight path, tracking data showed the bombers off the coast of Venezuela. Yes, they're being a bully, Tommy. The F-35s were also armed with destructive AIM-9 Sidewinder weapons, while the B-32s had no externally mounted arms. But don't even trust that. I'm sure they'd find those mounted arms when they're ready. The unprecedented mission marked the first time U.S. Air Force used the term bomber attack demo. They're ready to bomb. It comes as Trump said on October 17th that Maduro doesn't want to F around with the U.S. You see that? So just as you make that kind of statement, you make a big show of your military might, ready to bomb them to oblivion. Meanwhile, an AC-13OJ Ghost Rider was spotted in Puerto Rico on October 10th, 2025, armed with Hellfire missiles. You hear that? Additionally, satellite imagery of NAS Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico on October the 17th shows key Southcom assets, 6 F-35s along with an AC-13OJ. This lethal air-ground pairing fits missions requiring amphibious assault capability and sustained precision strikes on high-level, high-value targets. Listen to that. People are observing the kind of weaponry that America is flashing about the place. And they're saying, look, these kind of things are only usually used in lethal, in high-value targets. This is a show of lethal air-ground pairing. They say it fits the kind of missions that require amphibious assault capability and sustained precision strikes on high-value targets. This is serious. I don't even think I'm explaining how serious it is.
Sanisha, I was just saying.
We have dangerous people in a lot.
Right. Go ahead, my dear sis.
I was just saying, why all of this for one man? But then I understand is how to target him especially. But it's like when they say they're going for Hamas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that too. Oh, it's Hamas we're trying to kill, and they're killing everybody now. Everybody they're killing to get Hamas when they're inside the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So it looked like it's everybody in Venezuela and the region they want to kill just to get Maduro.
And I like that you say that, because think about what they think of his influence on others who support him in the region and what show they want to make to perhaps scare the others into giving them what they want.
Go ahead. Okay.
I just want to read some intelligence I got. I can't. Let me just say some intelligence I got. It is being confirmed by those who know that in the case of Trinidad, National Security Branch, they did have Black Hawk helicopters flying overhead sometime this week. And security personnel were put under red alert and were told to increase security in certain areas and do not engage if they see certain things. See what's going on? Serious. And your Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago has not even stood up for your own people who were killed in strikes. She has the people in the region crying shame on her and saying, playing song that says murderer, blood is on your shoulders. You will see when I show you the regional report from Ernesto Cook out of St. Vincent. Senator Rand Paul, he's one of the few politicians in America's government today that years ago when I visited America, I had a chance to meet and interact with. And he is putting it to Trump that he's wrong. You can't be doing this. What are you? You're not following international law, okay? Listen to what he has to say here.
We have dangerous people in a lot of American cities, but we just don't go in and shoot them. I mean, we have trials, they get legal representation. And even on the high seas, it's been that way for generations. If you go off the coast of Miami, the Coast Guard will be stopping boats today. And about 25% of the boats that they stop, that they're suspicious of drugs, there won't be any drugs on board. So 25% of the time, the suspicion is wrong. And that's why we don't shoot and just blow up boats off of Miami, but neither should we be blowing them up off the coast of Venezuela. Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that in order for them to get to Miami would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Rand Paul, by the way, speaking out vociferously against these drugs. You got to give the guy credit. Very principled person, at least on this issue. Let's take a listen.
President Trump has authorized military strikes against suspected drug boats in the Caribbean. As you know, so far, more than 20 people, Senator, have been killed in 6 different strikes. Do you believe that these strikes against these suspected drug boats are legal?
No, they go against all of our tradition. You know, when you kill someone, you should know if you're not at war, not in a declared war, you really need to know someone's name, at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence. So all of these people have been blown up without us knowing their name, without any evidence of a crime. And for decades, if not centuries, when you stop people at sea in international waters or in your own waters, you announce that you're going to board the ship and you're looking for contraband, smuggling, or drugs. This happens every day off of Miami. But we know from Coast Guard statistics that about 25% of the time the Coast Guard boards a ship, there are no drugs. So if our policy now is to blow up every ship we suspect or accuse of drug running, that would be a bizarre world in which 25% of the people might be innocent. The other thing about these speedboats is they're 2,000 miles away from us. If they have drugs, they're probably peddling drugs to one of the islands of Trinidad or Tobago off of Venezuela. The idea that they're coming here is like, it's a huge assumption, and really shouldn't you have to present some proof? It is the difference between war and peace. In war, though, you don't ask people's name. But if they want all-out war where we kill anybody and everybody that is in the country of Venezuela or coming out, that has to have a declaration of war. It's something that is not pretty, very expensive, and I'm not in favor of declaring war on Venezuela, but the Congress should vote. The president shouldn't do this by himself.
Props to Rand Paul there, talking about how these strikes are not only the legality, but also just the sheer, kind of craziness of the policy. And I want to let me, again, take you through the chess pieces.
They're just executing people summarily. They're not arresting them, getting the evidence, showing who they are, saying that this person had this number of tons of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever on the boat. They're not doing that. They're just alleging, suspecting, and just executing them like that. You see, calling them terrorists, labeling them narcotics terrorists, repeating that for the public, mainstream media spreading that propaganda and feeling that they're justified in doing what they've done. It is criminal. It is against international law. America is not supposed to be doing that. And the thing is that it is based upon lies in the case of what they're saying about Venezuela and what they're claiming. Where is the threat to you? Venezuela is not bringing fentanyl and cocaine into America. But you want Venezuela's reserves. You want their oil reserves, their gas reserves, their other minerals that they have, unmatched in some cases. In terms of the entire world, they have the most oil reserves in the entire world, more than Saudi Arabia. This is what is happening, and who wants it more than you? Who are you really? When you look at the politicians in America who have been calling for regime change in Venezuela, they all have one thing in common. They're Zionists. When you look at Maduro's speech, 2024, 2023, but mostly 2024, he has been condemning openly Netanyahu and the genocide in Palestine. Is that why they're targeting him? He has even been calling upon other South American countries to stand with him and condemn the genocide. And he has done it at international fora as well. 4 more minutes on this clip.
One of the pieces of news that we covered last week was about this U.S. military admiral or U.S. naval admiral who had visited the Caribbean. And he had done that twice since the big buildup. And we actually looked at that as a piece of significance because of the huge buildup, naval buildup. Well, it now turns out, let's put this up here on the screen, that he has now had to step down. This is from Southcom. Admiral Alvin Halsey is leaving less than a year into his tenure as the Pentagon escalates attacks against boats in the Caribbean Sea. And he is not only leaving it amidst the rapid buildup of 10,000 forces in the region, but of this new CIA mission, and also the speculation, the scuttlebutt, at least from what I've heard around town, is he was one of those people who raised concerns about some of these strikes. Not just the legal justification, but the strategic justification as well. You put those two things together with him going away, it's not good. And also,
he raised concerns about these strikes. Some people say he grew a conscience. He resigned. He had come into the Caribbean to meet with Antigua's prime minister, and I think Grenada. Apparently, Washington is not satisfied that he did a good job because Antigua Prime Minister Gaston Brown came out and said, no, we're not giving America what they want. They want to use Antigua, same request that they made to Grenada, apparently, that they want to use them as a base for their military assets. And Antigua came out and plainly said no. So it's like he failed. Grenada hasn't answered yet. The talk is that the last thing was that the Prime Minister was supposed to answer by Friday coming. Now I'm hearing he has put off something to Tuesday. I will show you a clip with that. But this Admiral, commander of the U.S. Southern Command, he was supposed to apparently advocate their views and get these islands to agree. But he did not agree with what America was doing. Now, whether they fire him or he resigned, people are saying he grew a conscience, quote unquote, and he couldn't take it, he didn't support certain things, and he decided to resign after only just being in his position for like a year. See what is going on? Hope they don't kill him.
You put those two things together with him going away, it's not good. And also,
not that, okay, even if they were drug traffickers, it still wouldn't be okay. We've been interjecting drug traffickers in these waters. If you have to blow them up, then they can't stand trial. What does that tell you about the case that you'd be able to make against them? But you had an instance recently where one of the people that we randomly murdered in the Caribbean was Colombian, at least one of them. And so the president of Colombia, who is very outspoken leftist, says, Mr. Trump, Colombia has never been rude to the USA. On the contrary, it's greatly admired its culture. You are rude and ignorant toward Colombia. Read as your charge d'affaires in Colombia did 100 years of solitude. And he assured you will learn something about solitude. I don't do business like you do. I am a socialist. I believe in aid, common good, and the common goods of humanity, greatest of all, life put in danger by your oil. If I'm not a merchant, then much less a drug trafficker. In my heart, there's no greed. I can never get along with greed. A mafioso is a human being who embodies the best of capitalism, greed. And I am the opposite, a lover of life, therefore a millennial warrior for life. Greed flees from us because life is more powerful. And in response to this exchange, and he and Trump were going back and forth, Trump has now cut off aid to Colombia and is threatening increased tariffs on them. Now, Colombia receives a fair amount of U.S. aid, but not as much as it did at one point in the early 2000s during Plan Colombia and that era. But in any case, so this is, some of the fallout going on. And Colombia is an important, large part of the cocaine production is in Colombia. So if you want to deal with, drug production and drug flows, this is a country you want to be able to partner with. Instead, we're antagonizing them so we can blow up random fishing boats in the Caribbean.
Well, and if you put it together with what's happening, let's go to the next part from Trump. He went ahead and said that President Gustavo is an illegal drug leader, strongly encouraging massive production of drugs all over Colombia, is become the biggest. As of today, these payments or any other form of payment or subsidies will no longer be made to Colombia. The purpose of drug production is the sale of massive amounts of products into the United States. So this is immediately, cutting aid in response to the criticism. Colombia, of course, next to Venezuela, and actually was part of what their difficulty has been is also dealing with a lot of these Venezuelan migrants, which they themselves have their own crisis with. It's causing a lot of political consternation in the country and has for some time. Let's again start to put some of the chess pieces together. Let's put this next one up here. Again, nobody blinks an eye, apparently. B-52s flew off the coast of Venezuela in a recent show of force. I mean, these are like nuclear-capable bombers. This is...
You hear what the B-52s are? You hear what B-52s are? Nuclear bombers. That's what Trump flying around over our skies in a show of force. What is wrong with him? You hear that?
With. It's causing a lot of political consternation in the country and has for some time. Let's again start to put some of the chess pieces together. Let's put this next one up here. Again, nobody blinks an eye, apparently. B-52s flew off the coast of Venezuela in a recent show of force. I mean, these are like nuclear-capable bombers. This is... If people don't know what a B-52 is, it is genuinely one of the coolest aircraft that the United States military has. I got to see a couple when I was in Qatar, and seeing them in the plane or seeing them in the sky, it's unbelievable, like the level of military might that they are. And so to take 3 and to just, you know, take it all around Venezuela, off the coast, there's only one reason to do that. Mm-hmm. It's the same reason that we always fly them. It's a threat. And so, yeah, they took off from Barksdale Air Force Base, and they just kind of circled around Venezuela in a huge show of force. All of this is just pointing in one direction.
Brother Aaron of Anna said, speaking about Horsley, the commander who they said resigned, who came to meet with Antigua and Grenada and didn't get through, really. He was forced out, probably forced to sign a gag order not to speak about the details of his resignation, right? And we know that others are reporting that he did not agree, as they said here on Breaking Points. So this is a combination clip. We have some information showing Maduro's position over time with respect to Israel, showing who Israel has supported in Venezuela, which is Machado, the opposition lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize. And then we will show how many of the politicians in America who have been like lobbying for regime change, literally have been talking about we need to deal with Maduro, we need to deal with Venezuela. Over time, they all have in common that they are Zionists. So people putting 2 and 2 together, including the fact that this lady promised certain things concerning Israel if she should replace Maduro, and they're realizing who is really behind it after all. Let's begin with this. Maduro, this is a tweet, 2023. Maduro has followed in Chavez's footsteps and has forcefully come out against the ongoing genocidal slaughter and mass beheadings of Palestinian babies and civilians in Gaza. This is why the US and the West turned Venezuela into a pariah state. You are not allowed to defy us. This person posted this and gives you the clip with Maduro speaking. I hope you could read the screen. I will try to help. Let me just do something here that would help me. Okay. So here's Maduro speaking. In 2023. No electricity, no water, just no, I think it, yes. Let me just read that over, sorry. No electricity, no water, no fuel. He's talking about the situation in Gaza. Total blockade, invasion of Gaza. There, in a small space, 5 million of human beings, live millions of human beings, who for decades have been bombed, tortured, attacked, persecuted, and martyred. That is the sacred people of Gaza. And the world has to react and say, No to the genocide against the people of Gaza. No to the genocide against the Palestinian people. The Christian, Muslim, Jewish world, the world of the South has to react. We have to wake up and stop this announced genocide that is taking place against the people of Gaza. You see? Then we have here another report. This is what Maduro is reported to have said. Who's the one that bombs their neighboring countries every day? Iran? No. The Zionist state led by Netanyahu. The Trump administration put a $50 million bounty on his head after this. You see? So this was August 2025, the same month when Pam Bondi comes out and says, $50 million to arrest him. Anybody call us, we give you $50 million. What was Maduro saying around those times? He was condemning Netanyahu, Zionism, and the genocide, and then they want to go after Iran. So let's hear the clip where he is saying it. You see what has been going on, brethren? Who bombs their neighboring countries every day? Iran? The Zionist state led by Netanyahu. Who tests bombs by destroying buildings? Houses, hospitals, schools, maternity wards? Who? Not just now, 76 years. They let the genocide in Gaza happen. And still, every day they kill 100 Palestinians, 60 boys and girls, women, the elderly. They destroyed 80% or more of the buildings and houses, schools, mosques, churches, hospitals. They destroyed everything. And that Western world of European elites and US imperialists supported the destruction and genocide of Gaza. A genocide broadcast live on social media. Then they went after the people of Lebanon. And they also killed dozens, hundreds of innocent people in Beirut. In southern Lebanon, the noble Arab people of Lebanon, they are our brothers. Then they went for Syria. And they still bomb it whenever they feel like. Netanyahu and the Zionists. Now they try to crush Iran. And a war has broken out where Iran has shown immense military power. And as the Iranians themselves say, they still haven't brought out the strategic weapons they've prepared. What do we want for humanity? What do we want? That a nuclear war escalates? I don't think so. That a war escalates and starts to take on global characteristics and takes all of Central Asia, East Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and once again brings a great destructive war to the whole planet. Those who hold political power and have driven this war with just one word could stop it. But every day, the arrogance of supremacists throws more fuel on the fire. Every single day. We in Venezuela advocate for peace, for a just peace. And we support the Palestinian people, the people of Lebanon, the people of Yemen, the people of Syria, and the wonderful people of the Islamic Republic of Iran. You see that?
Today, the Department of Justice
and it's right after this, they come out and say $50 million for Maduro head. He didn't mince his words. He called it as it is. Netanyahu and the Zionists. And he showed the wickedness they're doing there. You see that? Imagine Maduro, of all people. So it's right after this, here, this wicked woman who wouldn't give you the Epstein list.
Department are announcing a historic $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Maduro uses foreign terrorist organizations like TDA, Sinaloa, and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs and violence into our country. To date, the DEA has seized 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his associates, with nearly 7 tons linked to Maduro himself, which represents a primary source of income for the deadly cartels based in Venezuela and Mexico. Cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, resulting in the loss and destruction of countless American lives. The DOJ has seized over $700 million of Maduro-linked assets, including 2 private jets, 9 vehicles, and more. Yet Maduro's reign of terror continues. He is one of the largest narco traffickers in the world and a threat to our national security. Therefore, we've doubled his reward to $50 million. Under President Trump's leadership, Maduro will not escape justice, and he will be held accountable for his despicable crimes. If you have any information to bring this criminal to justice, call 1-202-307-4228 or go online.
Long live our homeland, long live Venezuela, long live Palestine, long live Lebanon, long live the great homeland. Ever onwards to victory. This is what he has been doing in Venezuela and calling upon the other nations around him to condemn the genocide. They are not converted. They could play hypocrites if they want, as well as they could also say it wrong. Because they go to the UN and they go to these places and they ask them to take a vote. And there are nations who vote against the genocide and vote for a Palestinian state. That don't mean they're perfect at home. But if they vote against the genocide and if they say there should be a Palestinian state, we will say they are right. You see? And here is Maduro. I think this was one at the BRICS meeting or something. And hear him. Where is justice for Palestine?
Sobre un edificio de apartamentos en Gaza.
This was the question, this was the topic. Let me read from below. He said,
Cada vez que cae un
a
misil
high precision missile, let me turn this down a little bit because it's a bit high. Every time a high precision missile, he said,
de alta precisión sobre un
falls on an
edificio de
apartment
apartamentos
building
en
in
Gaza
Gaza
y
and
mata
kills
hombres, mujeres
men,
y
women,
niños.
and children.
Cada vez que cae
Every
un
time a
misil
missile falls on Beirut
sobre Beirut o sobre el
or
sur
on the
del
south
Líbano,
of Lebanon,
esos
those
misiles
missiles set fire and
incendian y
destruction
destruyen el
to the
sistema de
United
Naciones
Nations
Unidas.
systems.
¿Dónde está la
Where
Corte
is the International
Internacional de
Court of
Justicia?
Justice?
¿O es que fue
Putin watching?
creada solo para
Or was
perseguir
it
a los
created
países
only
del
to
sur?
persecute the countries of the South?
¿Dónde está
Where
el
is the
sistema
system
de
of
justicia
justice
de
in the
Naciones
United
Unidas?
Nations?
Solo para
Only to
sacar
put out
documentos,
documents and statements?
comunicados. Y la
Are the
vida de
lives
los
of the
niños y
children of
niñas de
Palestine not
Palestina
worth
no
anything?
valen. Ha habido dos grandes temas.
There have been two major
El primero, el rechazo.
is that. He says there, another clip. There have been two. I'm showing you what he has been saying all last year and so, right? Netanyahu and they wouldn't like this. They wouldn't like this. They would hate him for it. Plus, they can't get his oil. He says there have been two major issues. And granted, he ain't bombing Venezuelans with missiles. There have been two major issues here in the UN. The first, the rejection of Zionism of Netanyahu. You see that?
De Netanyahu, del
Of
fascismo,
fascism, of Milei, of Machado, and of
y de todos los cómplices
all the accomplices of fascism
y de los
and of the
crímenes contra
crimes
los pueblos
against the Muslim
musulmanes,
Arab
árabes, contra el
peoples,
pueblo de Gaza,
against the people of
contra el
Gaza,
pueblo del
against the people of
Líbano.
Lebanon. Now we know they have a wrong idea of fascism, right? And the Milei person he refers to is one of the leaders, I can't remember which of the South American countries, but it's one of those who support Israel. And Machado is the opposition lady in his country who is clearly all for Israel. She literally called upon Israel. She wrote a letter asking Israel to have intervention in Venezuela, right? He says a total rejection.
Rechazo total.
He rejects what they're
Fíjate que
doing.
en Venezuela
Notice
quien
that
apoya
in
esos crímenes
Venezuela,
es el mismo fascismo.
I'm sorry. Notice that in Venezuela, to read this one a little faster. All right. Notice that in Venezuela, the one who supports these crimes is the same fascism that threatens Venezuela. The fascist Maria Machado is the one who supports the crimes of Netanyahu and the crimes supported by Milei. That has been the big issue, the rejection of crime, of fascism, of genocide. The second big issue is the support to Venezuela. We have received the beautiful support to the struggle of the people of Venezuela against the blockade, against the sanctions, and against fascism. Right? So, again, Maduro. So when you go on X, what you find is that people are not ignorant of the fact that over time recently, Maduro has been speaking out against Netanyahu, speaking out against Zionism, speaking out against the genocide in Gaza and the attacks on Iran and Lebanon and Syria and so on. And they know that he is hated because of it, right? Those Jews, no, he even has the wrong idea. By the way, Maduro said he's a Jew. Maduro said that his family roots is that. But he claims, he's saying that Netanyahu is not an authentic Jew. So he even has the wrong idea about, oh, he just come from some European country and so on and so forth. But I'm just showing you what is out there, right? He says those Jews from the 12 tribes who are not the ones who rule today in the state of Israel, those who govern today, Netanyahu is not an authentic Jew. He is a scoundrel who comes from Poland. For those who like to talk about religions and say that this is a religious conflict, no, this is not a religious conflict. The conflict that exists since the foundation of the state of Israel is a geopolitical conflict, because that state was created to conquer the entire Middle East and Central Asia, to take away their riches and colonize those peoples. It is the Zionist project that they say goes from the Jordan River to the Euphrates and beyond. So he's saying he's standing against the Zionist project. What did the U.S. use negotiations for? He's referring here to when they're talking about peace and calling for peace treaty. What did the U.S. use negotiations for? For deception. To deceive with possible peace agreements that when they were going to be signed, they fell apart. They were dissolved. And as each peace agreement fell, bombs arrived to kill the Palestinian people, or the people of Palestine. While negotiations were being held, the leader of Hamas was killed in the city of Tehran, back in Iran. And while peace agreements were denied to diplomatically resolve this entire conflict, they bombed buildings and killed more than 1,000 people in the bombing of residential buildings. They bombed buildings where families live. places of residence with central avenues. You have to see Beirut, so beautiful. Beirut is a jewel of the Arab world. How much pain there is for Palestine? Or is it that you do not feel pain for the Palestinian children killed by the hundreds every day? The girls, the women. Or is it that no one sees it? Or is it that no one saw how they killed 7 humanitarian missionaries from the West? And Netanyahu declares from Tel Aviv, says Netanyahu, we killed them, but it was not intentional. He declared that he killed them. It was not intentional. And the other killings, are they intentional? Or is it that in Palestine you have not seen how they destroyed the main hospital that took decades to build? The largest hospital in Gaza. They left it useless. They destroyed everything. And hundreds of corpses appeared on all the floors of people murdered by execution. Or is it that you did not see it? Or is it that no one sees it? Or is it that no one hurts for Palestine? Or is it that it is allowed for Zionism and the murderous elite that governs Israel to kill with blood and fire? Question mark. Is it allowed to violate human rights, international rights? Or is it that no one sees women with their humble children looking for food in the south of Gaza, in the city of Rafah? And they are murdered with high-precision missiles. Don't they see it? Don't we see it? It seems that the International Court of Justice, Madam Vice President, it seems that the International Court of Justice, Madam Vice President, does not see it. And if ever these agencies have ever exposed, and if ever these agencies have been exposed as being at the service of the imperial powers, it is at this historical moment in which the International Court of Justice has done nothing to protect the right to life of the Palestinian people. And so we say it from Venezuela. The morality of that International Court of Justice is in question. That it turns a blind eye in the face of the greatest genocide transmitted live and direct via social media. And what is humanity going to do in the face of that massacre? Subjects to reflect on, compatriots. Subjects to reflect on which Venezuela puts on the table of the world debate. Demanding a stop to the genocide by Israel against the people of Palestine. And that the International Court of Justice speak out and stop the genocide. He also said, this extremist right wing is supported by international Zionism. And financed by the social, right? Right? So he's speaking out against Zionism and financed, and financed by all the communicational power of Zionism, which counts all the social networks, satellites, etc., and is standing with which controls, all the social networks, satellites, and power, and is standing with this coup d'etat. So with the defense of Venezuela and the triumph of Venezuela, we are providing a great example what a people is capable of doing for its independence, its dignity, its history, and its right to a future. Venezuela always, and the Arab community knows it. The Muslim community knows it. Our Jewish brothers know it. And our whole community in general knows it. But especially my Arab brothers know it. That there are more than 1,500,000 Arabs here, Syrians, Palestinians, Egyptians, Lebanese, large number of Muslim brothers. They know it here and they know it in the world. That Venezuela is with the Palestinian peoples. Rights, peace, land, a state, and independence. And we will always be with Palestine. And that we condemn the most brutal genocide that's taken place since Hitler's genocide. Again, era about Hitler, against the people of Gaza, against the people of Palestine. And that we will be with the Arab and Muslim causes, which will triumph. Rather than later. Okay? And out of all the pain will emerge hope and strength, the right to life and the future for the Palestinian people and the entire Middle East. So the whole point about it, right, is that repeatedly, there were a lot more, but I couldn't, a lot of it he kept likening Netanyahu onto Hitler. We know he's deceived about that. And Nazism and things like that, right? This one has the date, but most of these came from like 2024. And what has happened is that a lot of people are pushing them out, like retweeting them because they're saying, don't you know that America and Netanyahu hates Maduro? They can't get him through sanctions to give up the oil and so on that they want to get. They can't get him to give up control. And furthermore, he's out there telling other South American countries and international bodies, we need to condemn the crime of Netanyahu. We need to condemn the genocide that Israel is carrying on in Palestine and the attacks on these different nations and so on and so forth. Is he without sin? Of course not. But he's doing better than many leaders of the world to say something about these things. And when we acknowledge how they vote, we don't do it because they are righteous. At least they say, no, I'll stay away from that. He says here, in the face of the greatest and most monstrous crime that is being committed in the 21st century, we cannot be silent. We will not be silent. Venezuela will continue to speak with its own voice to say, stop the genocide against the Palestinian people. Ceasefire in Gaza. Enough bombing, enough murder. Peace for Palestine. In the name of the Arab peoples. My brother Arab peoples, beloved Arab peoples. I ask this on behalf of the Palestinian people. I ask this on behalf of our Muslim brothers. I ask this of Christians, Catholics, Jews. I ask everyone, but I ask this assembly and the people of Venezuela. Let's do more to end the genocide against the people of Palestine. Let's do more for peace, the right to life of the people of Palestine.